Hello, Happy New Year. If you don't know, I'm Elena. I love talking about books. And so today I wanted to just, really take advantage of the hyperfixation that I've had since I was in high school, or like even 7th and 8th grade. And I wanted to talk about some of the favorite books that I read this year. I read a total of, I think, like 177 books, which was a lot, especially last year. I read, I think, like 70 to 75 or something like that. So yeah, it's been quite insane of a year. I don't know how I read that much. But yeah, I have a lot of good books to share. So yeah, let's just get started. So all of the books that I have to talk about today, I believe they're 4.75 to like 5 stars. I think the majority are 5 stars. And so I would be remiss if I didn't talk about my honorable mentions because I wanted to keep my top to just like 10, but I need to talk about these other ones. First off, I'll start with Cultish. This is a nonfiction. I'm talking about like the language of that like cults use and other culty type groups, hence the name Cultish. So it talks about like actual like religious cults, for example, like Scientology, all the way to like fitness classes and like CrossFit and stuff like that. I love stories about cults, so I love this one. Okay, next we have Kingdom of Ash. So I had read Throne of Glass up until Queen of Shadows, I think when I was like 15, and then I just stopped because I wasn't really interested in it. And then of course with Book Talk, the series somehow became popular again, and I was like, okay, let me just finish it because I have the books. So I finished Kingdom of Ash this year and I really liked it. Is it the best like series I've ever read? No, but I cannot deny that this ending book was really good. The YA, it used to be YA, but now like as the series goes on, it's definitely more adult fantasy series. It's not fantasy romance. Don't go into it thinking that, okay? Because it's not. A lot of really good like world building, characters are fun. It's just a fun time. I didn't cry really. Some parts I did, but like it was just an overall good time, so that is why it's an honorable mention. Next is probably like the most surprising book that I read this year. It is When Among Crows by Veronica Roth. If you don't know, Divergent, yeah, she wrote it. And so I read this book because Carrie Can Read, who I love here on YouTube, she talked about this book and loved it, and I was like, okay, anything she reads I have to read. And so I picked it up, not expecting to love it as much as I did. It is really short, more of like a novella. It's really urban fantasy focusing on like Eastern European mythology, but also has like vampires and other creatures and stuff. There is like a tiny bit of romance, but really I just love this because the vibes were so amazing. It's this like underground world set in Chicago. It was just like the story. Do I remember much of it? Kind of, but I definitely want to reread it. If urban fantasy is up your alley, just give it a shot. That's all you need to know. And my last honorable mention, we have The Ministry of Time by Kaylee and Bradley. This was marketed as like sci-fi. It's not sci-fi. I would definitely say it is more of a literary fiction with sci-fi and romantic elements. It's about this girl who works for the Ministry of Time, and this ministry has figured out time travel, and they want to kind of experiment time travel, and one of these experiments is to bring people from the past who are about to die into the present day. And so the main character, she gets paired up with one of the men who got brought back into the future from the past. I mean, you just follow their lives, and it really talks about like race. There's a lot of talk about like, is what they're doing ethical, and lots of things that I wasn't expecting going into this, but that I found myself really reflecting on. So yeah, this was a really unexpected 5-star for me. I really enjoyed this one. Okay, top 10 time. So my 10th favorite book of the year was one that I read it on a whim because I was like, I'm in just a pure romance book mood and nothing was really calling my name. And so I was like, you know what? I've heard a lot about this. Let me just try it. It is Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. I am afraid, deathly afraid of pregnancy, anything to do with pregnancy. And so I had known about this book for a while, but was so scared to read it because I don't like pregnancy. But I know that there was disability representation in here, and so I want to really diversify my reading. I'm being very intentional about that. So I picked this one up. I freaking love this man right here. Yeah, he's amazing. He treats our FMC so well, and our FMC like also individually is such an amazing person. I really love them both individually as well as a couple. I think they both work like as who they are, and then they also have an amazing friendship on top of the romance. If you love like more friends to lovers, I think like this could be really up your alley, even if you don't love a pregnancy trope. I quite enjoyed this. And number 9, it is Queen of Shadows by Sarah J. Maas, the 4th book in the Throne of Glass series. So again, I already talked about how I had read up till Queen of Shadows when I was a teenager, and I remember reading this and I thought it was just okay, like I wasn't really invested. And looking back on that now, I feel like I wasn't in the right space at the time to be reading a chunky fantasy like this, you know, as a 15-year-old. So I read this year, and I think this is my favorite book in the series, mainly because of the characters and the character relationships, and not plot twists, but like surprises that the author included in this. I know that like Sarah J. Maas is kind of, there's like controversy around her. I'll say that. So I'm just purely talking about what is inside the book. I think that if you're on like Heir of Fire and you're not loving it, like even now, I read Heir of Fire this year and I still did not love it. Hot take, I don't like Rowan. Sorry. And even more of a hot take, I'm a Kale girly. So don't come for me. But if you're getting up to Heir of Fire and you're like, this just isn't working for me, just try it out. I know it's a lot to ask, like to spend 4 books just to get to this one, but I think it's really worth it. I had an amazing time with this. Okay, another hot take for my 8th favorite book of the year. It is The Atlas Complex by Olivia Blake. And I love saying how much I love this because the average rating for this is so bad. Do you know like how many bad reviews you need to get for your book to be below 3 stars? I am one that gave it 5. So if you don't know, this is the 3rd and last book in the Atlas 6 trilogy. It's one of my favorite trilogies of all time. It is urban fantasy, dark academia, a little bit of romance, a lot of science fiction, heavy on the science physics talk specifically. Taking all of that into account, the vibes are amazing. The characters, I love them. I know it's not for everyone, but, and hear me out, okay? Just listen, okay? It's not gonna be for everyone, but if you love science in books, if you love amazing characters and character relationships, if you're okay with being confused, and this is the big one, if you are okay with being confused and are okay with ambiguity, and you can just like overlook it and just have a fun time and enjoy the characters for what they are, I think you would really like this series. I know I do. The whole time that I was reading it, I was having a blast. So yeah, that is The Atlas Complex. At number 7, we have Scarborough by Catherine Hernandez. And so this is kind of like just general fiction, but it really does feel like a non-fiction. And I'll tell you why. So Scarborough is a certain like area, borough in Toronto, which is where I live in Canada, if you didn't know. I don't know why you wouldn't know that. And so it's about this like group of individuals who live in Scarborough, and it's really just telling like their everyday lives and struggles that are going on. But while it is fiction, because of the subject matter, it's very much like a nonfiction. If you're kind of picking up what I'm putting down. So yeah, we follow a bunch of different characters, and they are all from like different backgrounds. It really is just commenting on the everyday life of people in like an urban city environment in a borough that has like a lot of hardships, and it is largely of a low socioeconomic class. And it really humanizes people, which is crazy to think that like you need to humanize people. Like, but I think that this is a super important book for many types of people to read. Even if you're not from Toronto, you're not from Canada whatsoever, this is such an amazing book, and it was so heartbreaking. I cried. And yeah, I would highly recommend it. If you could read any book from any of the ones I'm talking about, please let it be this one. Okay, number 6 is my favorite horror of the year. It is We Used to Live Here by Marcus Cleaver. It came out this year, and just when I heard like the premise, I was hooked. It's basically about this lesbian couple. They buy and move into this new home and they're renovating it. And one day, this family shows up at the door and only one of the couples is home. Like only one girl is home, and she opens the door for this family, and this family is like, oh, we used to live here. Like, can we come in and I can show like my kids around to see where their dad grew up? And she's like, okay, like she's really uncomfortable about it. Like she doesn't want to let them in, but she's a people pleaser like me. So she's like, okay, fine. Like just what could go wrong? Everything can go wrong. I love this. Duh. Like it wouldn't be on this list if I didn't love it. I would say if you love Jordan Peele movies, you need to read this. It is so good. If you love like going on like Reddit. Okay, what I mean by that is like if you love like people doing deep dives on Reddit and like reading threads and just getting lost in the sauce, if you love like creepypasta, like you have to read this. It is so good, and I wasn't expecting it to love it as much as I do, because the last horror I think I gave 5 stars was Bunny, and that was 2 years ago. There's also like secret messages in the book. I'll try to find one. So like if you can see here, there's like in between the chapters, there's like notes or like case files, and so this can be like from articles, transcripts, and things like that. At like the end of the files, there's like Morse code, and so it's like also interactive like that. I think like within the files themselves, there's also like clues and puzzles to like go through. I didn't do all that because I don't have the time, but it's also a very interactive book, and I highly recommend it. Top 5 time. My number 5th, very controversial. People love it or they hate it. I am one who loved it, but I do acknowledge its faults and the things that people don't like about it. I fully understand it, but that is A Little Life. This is by far the book that I have annotated the most in my entire life. And I don't even like have the time to annotate like that. The main character, Jude, and his friends, who they're like, all of the friends are kind of main characters, but then eventually it just becomes Jude's story. It really just sucks you in. You can feel like the love, but also the tension between them all. Like they fight, but they make up, and you just follow them through decades of their lives. And then eventually when you get to Jude's story, you just learn all the shit that he goes through. It's a lot. And there are so many trigger warnings, so many things happen to him. I started making a list in my Notion of all of the bad stuff that happens to this man, because I was like, it's like a bingo card at this point. Like full card, let's try to get it. If you love sad books, I think that maybe give this a try, although again, like you need to look up what is in this book. It is not for the faint of heart. I had to mention it here. Coming in at number 4 is The Ballad of Never After, specifically this book, because this book was 5 stars. I read the whole trilogy this year. The other 2 were 4.5. But it really is like a 5-star series. It's a YA fantasy romance, very light fantasy. It's more of like fairy tale vibes. You're following Evangeline and Jack, who is the Prince of Hearts, I think his name is. Really, I was just in it for them. I wanted to know their story. Basically, like at the beginning, Evangeline, she has this man, and the man is like, sorry, never mind. And she's like, no, but like, come back. And so she tries to make a deal with the Prince of Hearts to try to get him back, but then, you know, it doesn't end up that way. Like, you know. I love an unrequited love story. I love someone who loves someone, but can't say it. I'm a sucker for it. And so this series was right up my alley. Coming in at number 3. Now from here until number 1, just know that you're gonna see I love dramatic love stories. If it's unrequited, pining, yearning, I will eat it up. So 3rd, this is how you lose the time war. All those things I just said, yeah, this one. It is a sapphic romance science fiction. This reminds me of like the Atlas Complex or the Atlas 6 series in general, where the plot, do you really know what's happening? Nah, but like I don't read this for the plot. I read it for the people. You know what I mean? If you're going into it with those expectations, then I think you're set up for success. The writing in this book, the prose are so amazing. I underlined so much, and like that whole page was underlined. It's about these two people on opposing sides of a war. It's like a time war, so it's like these two sides in this futuristic world are like competing to take over the world by going through time travel and like adjusting things so that their side like comes out on top, whatever. It doesn't matter. You just need to know that these two people, they're on each side, and eventually they hate each other at first, but eventually they come to love each other, and they pass letters back and forth, and they just fall in love through these letters. What else do you need to know? Number 2, divine rivals. I'm just gonna include also Ruthless Vows in it because I guess I have an unpopular opinion. I love that book as well. Basically, like, these two gods in this world are at war, and so the humans that live in this world, like, they either align themselves with one of each of the gods. This girl, she's on the side that's getting their butt kicked, right? But she works at this journalism company. I don't know what they're called, but then she sees this job opening to go to like the war front to write like what's actually happening, like give real news. We don't do fake news here. And so she does that, but then she has this typewriter that is magical, and this typewriter has the ability to like send letters to people who also have another magical typewriter, and an owner of one of the other magical typewriters is her rival at this journalism company. Okay, they're always fighting to be on top. Okay, it's a little rivals to lovers. Okay, if you, again, with the war, I don't like war stories. I don't read historical fiction. If something has like World War I or II in it, I don't see it. I don't read it. But this was so good. Again, the yearning, the pining. At first, they don't know that like they're receiving letters from each other, but eventually, like, I could gush about this all day. I don't want to say anything more than what I've said because like that's all I knew in going into it, and then I read it and I absolutely fell in love. So yeah, that is Divine Rivals. Okay, and for my absolute favorite book of the year, hands down, it has to be The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This changed me. Addie as a character, I absolutely loved Henry. I don't only love him, but I see myself in him. When his story came about, I was like, oh, okay, so she's writing about me. V.E. Schwab is writing about me, okay? If you don't know, this is about Addie LaRue. She was born in like the 1500s, something like that. And she's about to get married off to this guy, and she's like, hell to the no, I'm leaving. So she leaves, and she's praying to these gods, trying to escape, and eventually one of them listens. But this god that reaches out to her, not the nicest. No, he has tricks up his sleeve, okay? And so she's like, please get me out of this. And he's like, okay, bet. She gets out of this marriage, but what happens is that she lives forever, but nobody remembers her. So she'll like walk into a Starbucks, she'll place her order, the barista will walk away to make the drink. He forgets, or she or they forget that a drink was ordered. And so Addie can never get a drink from Starbucks, basically. And so you're just following her through the centuries, trying to survive. She has to get real crafty on how to live because she can't even rent like a house. She can't buy a house because no one will remember that she rented or bought it. So it looks like she was just squatting. So, it's like all these different implications that were really fascinating to ponder on, like, if no one could remember you, what would happen? One year in the 2000s, she meets Henry, and Henry remembers her. She's like, oh my God, this guy remembers me. I need to take advantage. Not in that way. But anyway, she finds this guy that remembers her, and they form a friendship, and then eventually a romance, and then you kind of learn why or how he remembers her, and their whole stories individually and together. I ate it up. I got this beautiful edition from Indigo. Can I just show you what's on the back? Do you see that? It says I remember you. I am going to lose my shit, okay? The writing in this book is so fantastic, underlines so many things. And again, like, especially Henry's story, I connected with so much. I was a mess. I was in tears, I was smiling, I was giggling. I had all the emotions in this book. If this sounds interesting to you and you haven't read it already, please do. Just know that it is slow. It's very character based. In order to love this book, you need to love the characters, which I did, so I'm good. This was by far my favorite book of the year. It was a grower too. Like, when I first read it, it was 5 stars, but then as I kept thinking about it, I was like, oh no, this is a book that's changing my life. So yeah, that is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. And so those were all of my favorite books of the year. There are so many that I could talk about, and I read a lot of good books, a lot of mid books too, but you know, we move, we do better. If you like this video, please like it, comment what were your favorite books, what do you think about my unpopular opinions. Please don't come for me for liking Kale. I swear to God, I live with that every day. Okay, I live with it. I don't need the criticism. Okay, I already know. I know, okay. I also have a book talk. This is the handle, and a bookstagram. I just do random stuff on there because I like to talk about books, and I don't have many people that I can talk at length to about them because I don't want people to get bored and not want to hang out with me anymore. So yeah, that was me. Hopefully I make more videos. Okay, bye.